my goodness, everyone. It is Friday afternoon. It is 4:20 p.m. on your clock. That's assuming you're listening live. Like, I have to assume that you're listening live. I have to hope that you went to the Because Cannabis channel sponsored by Wayward Media, wayward.media. I have to hope that you went to that channel, that you found your thumb, or maybe you're cool. Maybe you're listening on a telephone right now. On a telephone. That's how you know I'm not cool, by the way, the fact that I just called it a telephone. Maybe you're listening on that fancy computer in your pocket and you put your thumb down and boop, you click subscribe. And so you knew that there was a new show coming today, 4:20 p.m. every Friday. If not, if you're listening to this on audio, iTunes, Spotify, all those good things, we appreciate that. Please follow, give us a subscription and whatnot. My name is B.C. Wehman. There's no one next to me today. We'll correct that. I do have a guest to sit with us today. We're really excited to talk with our guest today about what he is doing in the cannabis industry, a unique idea. We've talked often about ancillary businesses, right? All these things that are adjacent to the product itself, this actual plant product that is the center of what we do. And so many people work in the plant touching world and they grow it and they process it and they sell it. But really, the majority of jobs, and I think the latest number is probably 50-60% of some jobs in the actual legalized cannabis industry space, ancillaries. They're making things to help you smoke it. They're making things to help you test it. They're making things to help you store it. Or they're making things to help you promote it, sell it, make it look all fancy and nice. Like, who doesn't love a good, cool poster behind you? I would say I don't do great with mine behind me. This is my shout out to Fox Mulder's office back in the day, the X-Files, the infamous Trust No One poster. You can barely see it. I'm not maximizing the space on this poster. I work at the Cleveland School of Cannabis. We've talked about that often here on Because Cannabis from Wayward Media. Our walls are adorned with a variety of cannabis posters, but I have these 2 or 3 in my office, and they've been sitting in my office since I started. They were already there. Someone bought these really odd, abstract, I'll say, kind of artsy looking, like cannabis posters. They talk about terpenes, and a couple of them are scrolls. Like, they have like wood at the top and rope. And I was sitting there thinking about posters, because our guest today might make a poster or 2 or some fancy artwork in the cannabis space. And I said, I wonder who makes these posters. I walked on over, and what do I see at the bottom? ShopGoldleaf.com. ShopGoldleaf.com. Charlie McElroy of Goldleaf was on the poster. I will tell you right now, shout out to you from being from Cincinnati. We have at the Cleveland School of Cannabis probably 30 some posters. I went through and counted this morning because I knew I was going to be talking to you. We have a good 20 to 30 of Goldleaf's variety of educational posters hanging in the Cleveland School of Cannabis. Do you remember that order? Did they buy it all at one time? Do you remember selling to us?
I don't think they got them all at once, but I do remember connecting with various folks at the Cleveland School of Cannabis on occasion. So yes, absolutely.
They are cool looking, and I never really gave them 2 cents, if that makes any sense. I suppose I never really thought about who made them or where they come from, even though I like good artwork. And we often talk about fancying up the artwork or eradicating some of that stoner stereotype. And I would say, as we sit in this space, neither one of us, Charlie from Goldleaf, are giving off that serious stoner vibe. We lost Dustin for today. I lost my stoner centric side. He gives off the stoner chic. He gives me stoner cred with his beard and his hat and his unsightliness. I love you, man. So it's good to have some representation in here. So shopgoldleaf.com, Goldleaf. Charlie, you are from Cincinnati, and you have Goldleaf, which is an educational printing company, you know, focusing on the botanical science and making posters that are like that. But there's only one thing, Charlie, there's only one thing that anyone listening to the show really wants to know. Where are you at, Charlie, on the, some would say pride, some would say shame of Southern Ohio tossing sort of a meaty sauce that I can't tell if it's good or not on piles of spaghetti and cheese mixed with onions? Where are you at on that natty chili, that Skyline chili? Are you a fan? Does it gross you out? Where do you sit with that?
Yeah, man. Well, BC, great to talk to you.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you. We'll get to introductions soon. The important stuff matters.
Yeah, no. I appreciate you leading with that and bringing it up. I am a big fan of Skyline. So there are a lot of Cincinnati chili entities. It's been around for a long time. And for your listeners who don't know what we're talking about, it is a seemingly nasty chili that has kind of like a cinnamon cardamom type of flavor, which sounds
it's about
it's not that dominant. It's just like different enough to give this like earthiness to it. Of course, the meat is ground up into like the size of Nerds, the candy. So it's the consistency is really weird. So you want to hide it with a pile of cheese, or hide it within a bun if it's like a coney, so a hot dog, or on a pile of spaghetti, which is a little odd. But I do like Skyline more than Gold Star, more than some of the other ones. And fun fact, BC, our Skyline around where I live just got a robot server, like a real deal droid that serves food. Yeah, they had a naming competition. They named it Skywalker. Scott,
Yeah, I did. I felt like Droid McDroidface is the popular thing these days, given the naming online.
I submitted some fantastic name options, and they played it safe. Could have been worse, so pretty good. Yeah. But so some cutting edge stuff from Skyline Chili in Cincinnati with I guess maybe somebody lost a job to that droid, but if you see it in action, I don't think anybody lost a job to it.
Yeah, I feel like two things. I feel like A, there's definitely a copyright infringement at some point down the road for the Skywalker droid. And B, I always think of, did you remember hearing the story of the like the Kind Bot or whatever that came from Canada, Friend Bot, and they sent him, and when he got to Philly, they literally ripped him apart and left this poor robot on the side of the road out there in Philadelphia. So that's what I feel eventually. You see these customer service videos, people go crazy if you mess up a milkshake or put ketchup on their burger. They like jumping across the counter. Skywalker, the chili serving droid, is not long for this world. If we had to bet, that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, you might be right. I would say the caveat is that Skywalker is relegated to only the inside dining room. He's not handling the crazy drive-through folks. And I guess like where I live, it's kind of a conservative area of Cincinnati. So basically older folks, and they're not taking sledgehammers to Skywalker.
Probably not.
Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe somebody is going to lose their stuff on that poor guy. They might.
It is surprising then. Do you think your conservative neighbors know that right next to them is someone who's making some amazingly artistic, beautiful posters, that's making cannabis journals where you can document your experiences? Like right down the street, they're like these older conservatives, which, let's be honest, Ohio is a begrudgingly medical state. I'm Northeast Ohio. I know this. Like we have it. We don't want it. So you are someone who's crafted this beautiful artwork. You're from Ohio, went to Ohio University, but made these amazing posters and journals with Goldleaf. Do you think they'd be surprised that, their neighbor is out there promoting, and in a very healthy scientific way, but sometimes people hear the word and they just think you're like a weed poster. Like they just picture you're like, what are you doing with it? I feel like, are you comfortable telling people what you do?
That's a good question. I always tell them what I do, but I don't jump right into the subject matter.
Yes.
I let them see it on their own. Yeah, I let them find that out on their own, and it's so fascinating to see their reactions. Oftentimes there's like, like, because the whole point of what we do at Goldleaf, and this has evolved a little bit since we started in 2016, but we want to paint the subject with like a respectful, mature brush. We want to make it accessible. We want to, get past all that stigma. And coming from Ohio, I spent time in Texas and stuff. I know that like people aren't wholly against cannabis, even people who are not like pro cannabis. I think they're more afraid of the way it was portrayed and the culture, the stoner culture. So I feel like it's disarming when they look at something and don't realize it's like maybe a journal for medical cannabis patients. And then they start paging through it and they're seeing some words and then it clicks, and it's hard for them to get like too upset. Yeah. And like, but yeah, to your point, like almost everybody I've talked to, once they find out, and I'm kind of hesitant. So, I mean, I'm talking about print partners, shipping partners, warehousing, like support systems for businesses. they don't know what it is right away, but once they find out, and these are like older conservative people, they're telling me like that they grow weed in their garage and like, you know, telling me a story of their daughter who gave her a joint for her or you know, for the person's arthritis or something. And it was wonderful. And so I feel like I have a very I'm not a great litmus test for knowing where people will land on the subject, because you would think that, you know, I'm in Butler County, so it was old John Boehner's district, super conservative, and then, you know, John Boehner is a huge investor in cannabis.
Yes, well, money talks
once he gets out of office. So it's weird. It's like I guess there's still like a farming culture here. So in the end, I think nobody's really been totally serious about it, but or serious about like the prohibition and stuff. But yeah, and Ohio is weird. We're the only state, I think this is still true, but the only state where we quote legalize cannabis not through a ballot initiative, but through our own legislators making a law. I'll bet they did it to avoid the ballot initiative. So there was some like gamesmanship there. But like you said, it was kind of like a regretful passing of this. They didn't want to do it, but they saw the writing on the wall and they're like, we want control. So they did it. And they kind of did a shitty job of it. But at least it's progress. And now we can iterate on it. Hopefully we'll just blow it all away and just do a ballot initiative. That would be great.
One of these days, Ohio was one of the first to legalize cannabis, especially medicinally, through legislative measure. But just 2 years after us, in fact, Illinois became the first adult use state to push cannabis through on a legislative measure. Still to this day, only 4 states have done medicinal through legislative measure, and Illinois is still the only adult use to go that way. But it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense when you look at these ballot initiatives, and we'll get to Goldleaf and what shopgoldleaf.com has there, you know, but it's because of these things, legalized cannabis, that Goldleaf is able to basically openly operate and say, we have these awesome things, and you're not relegated to a smoke shop or a Spencer somewhere. Like, you're able to sell them online. Like, this is something your posters, and they would be more blacklighty for sure, would have been in Spencer's, you know, even with the cool trichome symbols and terpene things and all these other educational aspects you build into it. It would still be seen as taboo. But Ohio tried. It's about the money, clearly, always about the money. And it makes sense, though. I don't know, be honest with you, we have another state, you know, right next to us in Pennsylvania that is, or even Indiana, which is between Illinois, Michigan. Like, there's a lot of legal cannabis money pouring into that state. Illinois is, last count, like 34% tourism business, or 34% out of state licenses, right? Which is up there with states like Vegas and those other states. Even Colorado is only like 29% out of state. So Illinois is one of the busiest tourist cannabis states in the country. You would think these other states would see that, like, would see that money, but they don't. And it's just weird sometimes to me.
I guess Michigan isn't holding that flag because of the Great Lakes. They're kind of like the only people who can go to Michigan, like by car, will be people from Ohio or Canada, which I don't think they would.
I like to picture all those people attacking Michigan in a boat, though. But like, give us your legal weed, like in a big boat, like a big hemp boat, right? Maybe with some banners. Yeah, maybe you could make giant sales at goldleaf.com, just big sales full of scientific facts as they're coming into there. All right, Charlie, we're a little off the rails, not really off the rails, having a good conversation. So let's talk like how you get here. How does a person, were you born and raised in Ohio? I'm going to imagine going to Ohio University. Someone who went for, engineering, technology, and management from OU, party capital, Halloween, big party, those things. That's all I know of OU is Halloween, right? How do you do that and then go from that major in a state that's conservative, in a conservative area, and say, I'm going to make super fancy, really highly educational artwork that talks about cannabis? Like, how does I know there's a lot to get there, but how do you go from there to where you're at now?
Lots of layers there, I guess.
We'll take it one by one. We'll onion this up.
Yeah, let's do it. OU, Ohio University, not Oklahoma University.
Yes.
I guess it was known as a party school, but I think like people who didn't go there maybe gave it that that thing.
Ooh, great stereotypes.
I didn't think it was any more of a party school, even less so than like Ohio State. Yes, they had a big crazy Halloween thing, but after the first time, at first year I did it, we like a lot of people just didn't participate in it. It was all out of towners. So
it's
it
a
was
hype
all,
thing, huh? Oh, it's a
it was
tourist trap.
There's all these dudes from Pittsburgh and and then Columbus coming down and just tearing it up. But yeah, so after OU, I did work in the music industry for a while, and really I kind of found my love for cannabis culture at Ohio University. And I don't mean like stoner culture. I mean like that's kind of where I was exposed to the social justice side of it.
Oh, okay.
As well as like the cultivation and the science side. There's always been a big like hippie population in Athens, Ohio, and Meigs County and stuff. In fact, I don't know if this is true, but and this is a project I've always wanted to do with Goldleaf, but sort of like a genetic map of where various cultivars have come from. But as I've explored this with our researcher and stuff, you just can't do it with cultivars because it's been under like in the back alleys and hidden from the formal view for so long that you just lost it. But anyway, I'm told that like I think it was keep going back to Star Wars here, but Skywalker and Death Star, Skywalker OG, were from Meigs County originally.
Oh, really?
That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true. I cannot verify it, but that is what folks in Meigs County will tell you. They're like,
well, I'm going to go with tall tales are true. Yep. We got microphones. We facts.
Ohio
#facts.
Tall Tales. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an urban legend. That's really interesting. I would not have guessed that even that thought, like that area. And I actually would have gone maybe a little to the other side, someplace like Yellow Springs, or like Antioch colleges, like Yellow Springs. I was just recently there. Strikes me as a very same kind of hippie-ish vibe. But that's a little interesting from down in that area. So when you say, oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Well, like Meigs County would pick their sheriffs based on how lenient they were on cannabis. Like they were, there was a lot of weight being grown there for a long time. And that's why there's like this big, old hippie population who, still influence, at least when I was at OU, still influence like the culture and stuff. They owned a lot of the businesses. And so yeah, that kind of like just running in those circles. I mentioned I did audio engineering. So I played music, I did mastering and then studio work. And that I don't know, it opened up certain channels and circles, and I got to kind of connect with these folks and get exposed to like a wider world of stuff. And I've always been a designer. I didn't formally get a degree in it because I've never believed that you need a degree for like art.
To be creative,
so I wanted to get something that I didn't know. I wanted to like improve myself, I guess.
Sure.
Although at this point I don't really use much of that, but I think at least like the college experience, if I'm trying to find the good things about it, it allowed me to meet my wife and allowed me to meet some great friends, get exposed to lots of new ideas, and try new things. So I moved to Texas after that and focused in on like honing my design skills. Still doing a lot of audio production. I found myself in Colorado. I spent time in Michigan because we have a lot of family up there, and kind of just learning cannabis culture. So I mean, I started a business with a former bandmate that was like sustainable clothing and stuff. And I've never been like a big like fashionista or anything. And it was like a kind of a high fashion brand, but what I liked about it was the sourcing. Like we were the only company, denim company, that was able to source everything within the Midwest region.
Oh, wow.
And that included, salvage denim from North Carolina, factories that used to make Levi's in like the 60s and before from Tennessee, and, YKK stuff in Kentucky. And, it went really well for a while. And we eventually my business partner got totally burned out, which I now feel like I know what that feels like. And he's like, hey, do you want to just take over and run it? And I was like, I really don't. It is not my passion. I kind of handled operations and stuff. So that allowed me to learn like product development, how to take something to market, how to figure out sourcing and navigate all that stuff. So we sold the company and exited, and I used some of those learnings to start Goldleaf pretty promptly. It'd been stewing in my mind for a while, and it's like a perfect canvas for all the stuff that I like to do and think I'm good at in terms of design, which is kind of a marriage of the left and right brain, like logic and rational thinking meets aesthetic design. And so, yeah, at Goldleaf, we make a lot of I would say infographic art. So it's like functional art. They're not, like blacklight posters, or we do have like some lovely botanical illustrations and stuff like that, but we always take things with the scientific brush. So they're going to look like the old scientific illustrations from the turn of the century, like kind of classic. We kind of maintain this minimalist style, again, to kind of let everything breathe. I like to envision people looking at the art piece and being drawn in visually and aesthetically, and then once they get close, they see like, oh, it's about cannabis or cannabis flavors, or decarboxylation or whatever it is. And so that was kind of the idea with Goldleaf, and the same thing is true with the journals, which is definitely what we're known for. We make journals for home growers and cultivators, people who are just starting out or who are wanting to improve. Not necessarily commercial ops. They're going to be using different tools, but for the home grower, I feel like we've got probably, and maybe a little bias here, but I feel like we've got one of the best like journaling products out there for tracking progress. And, that's just based on the fact that we make things in small batches and we iterate like crazy. So we'll hear back from customers, from like brand partners, and like user test results. And it's like, people are finding this part confusing, or these boxes are too hard to see, or nobody knows what this word means or something. And so we'll iterate on that. And like our patient journal, which is the cannabis journal for like medical folks, I think we're on our 13th edition for that one, or 14th edition coming out in 2023. And first there's a lot of changes as we go, like with the layout and workflow, and then things kind of calm down. We find our sweet spot, and then we're just kind of maybe noodling because we like to noodle from there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm gonna actually pull up the site because I think it's pretty cool to take a look at some of these things that are on there. So this is some of the journals you were talking about, and it's funny because we'll get a look at the posters here in a second. If you're listening to us on audio, shame on you. Should have watched us on YouTube every Friday, 4:20 p.m. That's where you get to see this stuff. Or just go to shopgoldleaf.com. You're going to find some of these great journals. I know you, Goldleaf, because of all these posters around the school, which I didn't know till the other day were from you. And I was like, oh, this looks like something on your website. And lo and behold, they were. But you are more known for, and this one right here is your patient journal, these different journals, from the patient journal, the tasting journal, a cooking journal, you even have pet CBD jotters and those things. So is that something that it sounds like, and I don't know how to say this, like this really newfangled idea to like, hey man, document your medicine and things. But as we've learned and grown up a lot in this industry, it really is helpful. I'm trying to help someone right now go through it, and we're trying to explain dosage sizes and how it works and the strains and the effects. And she's a little older, and it's difficult to get it into there. And I actually told her, I was like, hey, you should write some stuff down. Like if I give you this, you go to the card, to the medicinal dispensary, you get 20 milligrams of this chocolate, and it write down what's in there, the strain, the terpenes and stuff. Is that the type of information that people are doing when they're, grabbing something like the patient journal?
Yeah, essentially. And, so the patient journal has a different methodology than like the rec focused journals, which are more about flavor, experience, stuff like that. Whereas the patient journal actually takes the medical perspective. So we worked with a lot of doctors and like RNs when creating it. So the workflow, or like when you're building out like your journal entry, there's a section of essential stuff that you need to keep in mind before you start evaluating your body. Like, how are you feeling today? Are you hydrated? What other medicine are you taking?
Good point.
Like that. Yeah. That can really impact what happens to you when you try cannabis. You could have one particular dosing size of a particular like cultivar, and it is perfect amount of whatever. And then you try to repeat that, and it just utterly fails. You have a miserable experience. Maybe your symptoms don't go away, or maybe you feel like absolute terror. So yeah, it is weird. And that's one thing I kind of learned quickly about all plant medicine, is that you don't have, for better or for worse, big pharma there telling you the exact amount that you need to take. Do not deviate from it. Your if you have a problem, talk to your doctor. They'll tell you next steps. That's just never going to happen with cannabis. It never will. Not because people can't figure it out, but it's because of, the endocannabinoid systems in our body. Everybody's is different. It's always fighting for homeostasis, for balance. And what is balance for me is going to be totally different for balance for you. May even be different for me on a Friday than it is on a Monday, depending on what time it is.
Yeah.
So that is the system that you're messing with when you have cannabis. And so you have to be able to have kind of a track record if you're trying to treat an ailment, that is, so that you know what is going to work for you. And it, we found that the patient journal is like really helpful for people for a few months, and then they learn that routine and mechanism in their body, and they don't really need to keep them, long term. I like, from a sales perspective, that's probably not what one.
I was like, that's exactly how, like, buy for 3 months and then you're done. Like, you're good. But there's other journals.
Yeah, no, there are other journals, and that's kind of against the mission of Goldleaf. Like, we're not there to sell you a consumable. Like, I legitimately want to help people and offer like an ability for people to better understand the science, better understand all of cannabis, how it affects your body, and trying to help people, because there's so many people out there who are intimidated by cannabis. And I mentioned my family in Michigan. Like, a lot of them have problems with opioids due to, and these are prescription things. These are all things created by their doctors, all of them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want, if my family watches, I don't want them to think like, you call this doping.
He's talking about you right now, Uncle Johnny.
No, but
it's you.
Yeah, like they've had health problems or accidents and were prescribed stuff, and then it got so bad where they can't stop. They fight depression. It's terrible. And
it's just not your family, clearly. I mean, that's something that is obviously one of the common things. You're talking down in Cincinnati, you go a little more rural into that Appalachian area. Obviously, it's rife with that in Kentucky and Tennessee, those same, and really a lot of the Midwest, right? A lot of the Midwest. I live in a county that's one of the biggest meth counties in Ohio. Like, just, it's a nice upscale county. It just got the grip, right? Those drugs get a hard grip on you. So your story, and it's not about your family. It's common. It's common for people getting into medicinal patients or older folks, they're trying to find another way, because even if it's not, say, an opioid addiction, they have one of those daily pill containers and they need like 3 of them, because Monday has so many darn things, because you take 6 to do these things and then 6 more to offset the symptoms of those 6 things. And so we're trying to find, and you're helping them by providing these journals at shopgoldleaf.com that are saying, like, and it's hard. You have to do your research, and that's where it's hard. That's what I love about kind of the journaling aspect. And you may grow out of it, but then you get into the tasting journals or maybe the cooking journals. But initially, it's hard. It's hard to figure out the dosage. Or, for example, I had someone and I was having them try 10 milligram chocolate squares. And I'm like, well, take 1. Tomorrow, take 2. And I'm like, but don't worry, because I just need to get you to 1 milligram, and then I can get you a single bite that is that same thing, but I don't want to start you too much, because too much always ends bad. Like, you ever try someone too much edibles? So it's this weird line, but they may lose patience. So the journaling of it, if you get one of these journals from Goldleaf, you're able to like write it down and document. And I love what you mentioned, the section we showed a few minutes ago on screen, like the symptoms of the day, like even the weather or how you're feeling, or like if the Browns beat the Bengals, like you might be sad that next day, right? And so that may affect your usage. It's you got to give us, we don't have a lot here. So give us what we can with Cleveland Browns. We don't get a lot of praise here. So it's that same symptom though. I love how we're thinking, and you're forcing them in the journaling process to think more than just, this is what I consumed. Like the entourage effect is not just the terpenes and the other cannabinoids and flavonoids and whatnot. It's your other drugs. It's the sugar intake. It's your caffeine. Like it's all those things, right?
Totally. And I think like, so I mentioned, maybe I didn't mention this during the, this call so far, but I do a lot of, like web work, like web development. Okay. And, so like the logical step would have been to make an app for some of this stuff. And I know there are some out there, but even when I was starting down this like journey, there are some other things worth considering for the pursuit of somebody getting to know their body a little bit better, which is that writing something down, like actually writing down, your brain is going to recompose your thoughts to when you put like pen to paper. So it is helping you memorize things. It's helping you be more aware and more cognizant of what is happening in your body. If you're capturing like the second part of the journal entry, which is like, okay, now that you partook or whatever, so it makes you more aware. You're more cognizant of things. And furthermore, like journaling in general is kind of a meditative thing. It is allowing you to step away from the distractions of the screens. And, when I first started it, another big plus, which is not a big concern today, is like security. Like you're not having to have an app that is going to like potentially embarrass you or update, maybe your data is out there and you're trying to get life insurance and they're like, well, I see you downloaded this app. What's that about? So like there is like a discretion element of journaling as well that is certainly worth noting. We sell a lot of grow journals. Like that's a big side of what we do. And we sell them to virtually every state in the country. So you take with that information what you will, but
are you saying people are growing cannabis in states where it's not technically legal to grow? Is that what you're informing us of?
I'm not informing you yes or no of any of it.
You're just saying my book sells in a lot. Maybe they're gifting it to relatives that live in Michigan and adult use states. That's what I would imagine.
They're probably gifting it to people in Michigan.
But you know what? Wait, let's be honest. If you look at, and I know several people who are very good high-end industrial hemp farmers here in the state of Ohio. So if you look at it that way, I mean, there's this whole other market, the growing because of the 2018 Farm Bill and such, the CBD hemp, industrial hemp market, where I feel like this could be really something that could apply pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree. I know I talked with a lot of like mid-sized commercial growers. A lot of them like follow spreadsheets. They have, and some of them have like technology solutions. Because they, especially if you're in a place like Ohio is now, where the regulation states that you really have got to maintain a certain standard with your flower. They don't want to jeopardize that by like experimenting and deviating. So they're going to find their formula and just stick to it. Yeah. I mean, this is for people who like to nerd out on stuff, who want to like learn the grow process, who want to grow some unique cultivars and, repeat their successes or, avoid problems down the road. It's great for those folks, and that's who it's for. Like at least this piece wasn't one for those like larger scale ops, but I've always, loved to work with them in some capacity. Prior, that's pretty much been like infographic collaborations. But that's okay. We'll continue to focus on like the subset of people who I feel like who are most left out in the cold. So, yeah.
And it's good though. And the journals are one spot, but really how I learned about Goldleaf was through these, what you're seeing on screen here. We have some of these infographics. We have, yep, got that. This one right here, the Cannabis Effects wheel chart print. This is, and I look at this every single day, Charlie, every single day.
Nice.
This is in my office, and there's two little companion pieces that sit next to it. These little smaller ones. I don't know if they're part of that set. So I look at the this thing every single day. But if I'm like literally going through this, and I'm like, yeah, I've seen this terpene one. I know I've seen the chart of cannabinoids print. We have several of these, obviously, because they're amazingly cool looking graphics. You can see some of the things on screen that you're going to get at shopgoldleaf.com. But these aren't, as you said, it's beyond kind of the cannabis poster. They're really educational. I mean, they're really a lot of information. They're cool looking. Like this terpene food and wine pairing chart, which we also have, by the way. It talks about some of the terpenes. I think we have almost all these. It talks about some of the terpenes and such. But then you get into the wine pairing, and it's not only, it's going to teach you, but it's really cool looking, and it's not overwhelming, and it fits in any kind of room. Like it fits in our school, but I think it would fit tastefully in anyone's house. So I would imagine most people see them and don't even realize, like that right there, you wouldn't even know that's really tied into the cannabis industry. It's just a cool artwork.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That I don't, for good or for bad, I don't know if, but we did intentionally try to not like pull cannabis out of it. That's not what we've tried to do, but we've tried to just make like this subject. So in this case, we're looking at the primary terpenes print, and it's kind of telling you the different flavors or aromas that would be associated with the most ubiquitous terpenes that are kind of out there. And then it gives you more information like what other plants have this terpene and what are the potential medical benefits and stuff. And so, you don't have a big headline saying like cannabis flavors or something like that. It's just kind of subtly focusing on I guess like the appropriate terminology. I'm not nailing this description here, but
just your company. It's all right, Charlie.
Yeah.
It is. No, I get what you're saying. And like I say, we're showing some of these great images from shopgoldleaf.com, but they have really are intriguing and they bring people in. Like that's one of these things I can't really explain either is I'll be standing in our hallways and they are in almost every office, every room of our building. Now that I'm looking through them, I'm like, oh my gosh, we have all these. And you have to get to look at them a little closer because you're not quite exactly sure. You're like, oh, it's an artwork. And then you get closer and then you start to read it. And if you understand, like the one that was just on there, the activation boiling points and such, you're like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of information that's really neat and interesting into there. So let's do this. I mean, you have these different posters. How does that process start? Like you have all these different designs from botanical illustrations to terpene boiling points to all these other CBD guides. So where does it start when you go? Do you just have this idea and are you working on the art? You said you have some research. Like how do you get these ideas and bring these to fruition, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the answer is that it'll kind of vary, of course, depending on the topic. But our goal is to figure out what people are confused about and like solve it for them in a really like approachable way. So something that is digestible and simple, but also something that like looks attractive enough to hang up in like your kitchen or office or something like that. And so like with a lot of the cannabis topics, there's a lot of science involved, a lot of like, I don't know, confusion, misconceptions or whatnot. And I feel like at this point we've tackled most of those subjects. So I'll call that the low hanging fruit. We'll occasionally do like alternative iterations. Like you mentioned the chart of cannabinoids. We have a couple other cannabinoid science pieces, a bunch of terpene science pieces. But generally once we have an idea of that, something we want to do, if it's like research related, we'll kind of get to it. We only kind of focus on like primary source materials. So like verifiable stuff. And, I will note that not every piece we handle has primary source stuff. Like we did a piece on concentrates. like, what is the difference between like butter and BHO, stuff like that. And we rated them by like potency and flavor and stuff like that. And that we didn't like pull that out of our ass. We actually conducted a study mostly on the West Coast. So we connected with people who are extractors and worked in the industry. We got 200 of them to basically take this poll where they're rating each one. And, we kind of took that information and then built out this infographic that tells the tale of concentrates. Because this is a subject that people are super confused about, especially because the terminology is going to differ by state. So this one it was a collaboration we did with MJ Arsenal. Mm-hmm. If Dustin were here, he'd probably have something to say, maybe, because they also make glass.
Oh, he would probably love it. Yeah, he loves talking about the glass and it's there and doing those things. I just think it's cool. It is subjective, right? You have these different ways and it can go. But I think even the concentrate one, it gives you a good idea, right? It gives you a good idea. But once again, it's just a cool looking poster. It's minimalist. It's got usually use a lot of similar color palettes, kind of these like bright primary colors, but in a kind of muted tone of them, right? They're not popping red, blues, and yellows and oranges, like very fallish colors to me a little bit, in some of them. So I really like that vibe. Obviously the green and some of the botanical ones. It's a really cool idea. And I even we should give a shout out at shopgoldleaf.com. You have coffee ones as well. To be honest, if there's something I love, probably more than cannabis, like I could probably go a while without cannabis. I probably could not go long without coffee. If I'm being super honest, that is something I'd have to have daily. And that's clearly an addiction. But I love you have some coffee ones in there, talk about the beans and all those things. So that more than that. I probably is, as you start to figure out like, where do we go next? Is it finding other botanicals? Is it tapping into other markets? Like you even said, we kind of found a lot of what is out there, right? There's not going to be as many misconceptions once you start to explain them, or you start to get slightly repetitive and just a different look at it. So what do you think? Yeah. As you evolve, like what does Goldleaf bring? Are you just going to try and do this better, refine it? And like, what's your vision as you kind of move forward with Goldleaf?
Yeah, like as a designer, it does not sound fun to just keep doing different versions of the same thing. So, and then, harkening back to like knowing how like songwriting and music production goes, like it's healthy to finish something and then move on, instead of revisiting it over and over and over and over and over. So yeah, we did dabble into the coffee space. Botanically, I feel like they're very similar. Especially culturally, like there's a similar like connoisseur nature. I mean, man, the different cultivars of coffee are probably even more expansive than cannabis, or at least maybe rival it. So there's a lot there. And so we've kind of applied the same like methodology that we do with cannabis science to coffee science. And that was really fun because I agree with you, BC. Like I love coffee, and I feel like most people who enjoy cannabis for like the enjoyment's sake are probably also no strangers to coffee.
God, they go well together. They go so well together.
They do.
They do. It's amazing. I don't smoke cigarettes anymore. If I'm not going to promote them, but I'll be super honest. Like a early morning or late night cigarette and cup of coffee is still like, I don't want it because the smell is gross, but I can just picture it in my brain, eyes closed. I can remember it late night at Denny's. I went to Otterbein College in Westerville, not that far from where you were at.
Nice.
So I still picture those late night at Denny's or first thing in the morning, like kind of cup of coffee on a weekend with the cigarette. But the cannabis replaces that. It does. They synergistically, right? Something about, these different terpenes and the different coffee beans, as you talked about many of them, they're very similar. Have you ever thought about beer? Beer with its hops and stuff feels like a natural progression.
No, yep. You're right on there. Like, so, Goldleaf, we've kind of cut our teeth in cannabis, and that's still our focus, 95% of what we do. But, as like looking forward, I love the idea of kind of touching different botanical subjects. I mean, that's still a very common thread. So we've had people suggest, teas and mushrooms. I personally, I mean, living in Cincinnati, I really would love to do spirits. We're a stone's throw from bourbon country. I think Goldleaf could do a rad job
Oh,
at like
that would
some
be nice.
bourbon journals,
Yes.
and there's a lot of history there, a lot of scientific nuance to the distilling. However, I am still keeping that on the back burner because these ding dongs in power with the tech space are going to have as many problems with alcohol as they do with cannabis. And one thing I liked about coffee is that like nobody can punish us for talking about it like they do with cannabis. So yeah, for your listeners, just so you know, like even though Goldleaf is a print company at the core, we don't touch the plant. BC mentioned at the start, ancillary. We're totally ancillary, but we are painted with the exact same brush. With Google and Amazon and Pinterest and you name it.
Social media, you can't it's hard to, I would imagine, advertise. This is something we do at the Cleveland School of Cannabis. I don't even CSC is what I say all the time. We talk about hemp and we do those things, but even hemp gets dinged and knocked us off various social medias. We've had multiple, someone recently asked me why our social media accounts all are different. Like we don't have at Cleveland School of Cannabis, it all are different because we kept getting kicked off and we kept having to start new ones because they'd lose this one and add different things because we don't touch the plant up until recently, though we do have industrial hemp on site. Like we're just talking about it, like literally talking about it, but it's the name, it's that word. We don't even say weed or marijuana, we always say cannabis to professionalize it up.
What else are you supposed to say?
But it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to advertise. It's hard to get it out there. It's hard for businesses like yourself and some of the other ones we've had on and just around us to talk about it. Even as we mentioned in the beginning, kind of that litmus test. And I do the same thing, by the way. I go through, tell them I'm a director of marketing and communications. I host a podcast. I work in adult vocational educational training. I go out of my way to avoid the C word as much as possible. And then when they finally get there, you're like, oh, it's cannabis. They're like, it does do a shift, or the eyes do a rock-like thing and it pop up in the air. Like, what are you talking about? I wish someday I'm going to be cool. Like Dustin just walks up and he's like, I smoke weed. He's just all like, like he's just in. But you're like, no shit. I see that. It's clear. Yeah. He's going to be so. I love, one of my pastimes is making fun of him on the show, and he's not here to take it. But it is some of those things. Like I am cautious around it, and so you have to walk through it because, for example, I have a big shirt, several shirts, because just say cannabis across it. And I have to change before I go pick up my kids. Like I'm not around the plant, but if I walked into this with their school with let's say a Jack Daniels or a Jim Beam, a bourbon, there would be people like, that's awesome. I love Sam Adams or whatever you have. But cannabis, I might they would ask me to leave. I know for a fact. My wife is like, this is something we talked about before, but she works around the schools, and it is obviously I talk about it now. So I'm a Google away, but it's on the DL until asked. I don't think anyone knows what her husband does. So she's just like, I don't know what he does, because she's so afraid that someone's going to find out. And all of a sudden, parents won't let their kids come over here. Right.
I know. My default is similar. My default response is just like, we own our own business. It's print publishing. We publish books and infographics and stuff. And then they get to know us and they're like, oh, okay, these people are nice. They're not criminals. They're not, I don't know what other judgy things people would think.
Lazy, you're potheads.
Yeah. And then when they do find out, they don't care as much. Or at least their eyes don't go up quite so high once they find out. Then
eventually you just stop caring. I think that's the best part about doing this.
I'm years into that.
Yes. Yeah. So, out of the cannabis closet.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't care at all, but, I'm just kind of reflecting on the early days here in Ohio before we had the medical program. And, you had to be careful. We had to have disclaimers on our site. These photos were taken in Colorado, which they, frankly, they were when they were our original photos. We had a photographer there because we wanted some flower with some of the journals and stuff. And we couldn't facilitate that here in Ohio. But, anymore, I have my medical card. So I technically could do that if I were still taking photos for us. But yeah, it's like kind of a thing that just never really goes away. I don't know if it ever will, but it sure would be neat if it was seen kind of on that same level. And I think you had a good point. Like, people are starting to come of age who have never known a United States that was like, vehemently against cannabis. It's
Oh,
always
sure.
like wishy-washy. And so I think that is their baseline, and that's going to be good for everybody,
Yeah, any child, my own children here who are probably in their, well, not probably, I know who are in their teens, they're going to be fairly normalized. Any child born after like 2013 in Colorado knows nothing but, or anywhere out west now, anyone born out west in the last decade, knows nothing but that. And it's perfectly normalized. And there is no reefer madness. There is no fear. And then, obviously, if you look at the map of legalized states, it's slowly, other than Idaho up there, but in Nebraska and Kansas, those are those three outliers. But in the rest of the South, for example, kind of south of you is all more conservative, still CBD, slowly medicinal. Even some of those states aren't medicinal yet, low THC, like Kentucky, Tennessee, they're CBD capitals. Like, they're pushing themselves on growing the plant, but they're so scared to say we grow weed. They're like, we grow less than 0.3% THC, et cetera.
Yeah, Kentucky could have really been huge, man. Like, they were actively trying, like, they were one of the first states to have a legal hemp program that was okayed by the government, and they were trying to find a replacement for tobacco. And it would have been great if they embraced it a little bit better. You got Mitch McConnell from that state, who is also, I believe, a cannabis investor. So it's funny, it's funny that some of these conservative states that have a big population who'd be for it, it just never shakes out that way. Again, I think it's all about the money in the end. Once these like conservative folks start getting places of power in various cannabis cannabis companies and affiliated companies, I think it'll probably make its way through Washington.
I would think so. I always wonder why, especially in some of those Midwestern states, Oklahoma they're the Wild West of weed, but you have like Nebraska and Kansas, or these Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida, right? They would make a killing in the agricultural aspect of it, right? So farmers, traditionally considered more conservative, those areas, but there's so much money, as you just said, replacing tobacco, which is a trending down plant. Like, you have a trending up plant that is just in the beginning stages of what this thing is capable of. We got about 50 years. We're going to really be growing some great weed. Like, right now is dirt compared to what's coming down the road, right? Just because of science, right? Just hashtag science is coming down the road. So we'll see. We're getting there. I mean, Charlie, we haven't made a ton of progress. Now, I know, something that you were passionate about and used to do was the marijuana policy project. And we have upcoming guests. We have Andrew D'Angelo coming up soon from the Last Prisoner Project. Excited to talk with him. Yeah, he's coming on here in a few weeks. So we're excited, looking forward to speaking with him about that. Something that, Dustin being a patient, Dustin having past issues with family members being locked up in Michigan and stuff, it's important to us. I'm just curious how you kind of, got started. I know you used to work a little bit for them, working on veterans education. Just had Robert Kowalski from Veterans Ending the Stigma on here. Important PTSD, the number 2 recommended thing for cannabis medication across the country, typically outside the very generic chronic pain ones like Ohio. So let's talk a little bit about that. Some of that, back in the day working on the volunteer train. What was that like?
Yeah, that was a while ago. I was really motivated. It really felt like change was in the air. This was when they came into Ohio and they were working on getting a ballot initiative.
Some of those ballots. So you're looking at like 12 and 11. I think responsible or issue 3 was probably like 13 or 14. So you're in that early teen era.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean that definitely like opened my eyes more than many other experiences to kind of the nuances of how laws kind of come to be and how they change. And, it was just generally kind of a frustrating experience, not the MPP, but just the outcome of it,
Yeah.
And I think they were, I'm not sure what their stats are now, but they were batting 1,000 then. Every state they came into, they passed something. And Ohio was like next on the docket. And, it was very hopeful, and it definitely kind of steered me down the path to take like a more proactive approach to kind of like responsible education with what Goldleaf's kind of done. We still like to support those types of initiatives with Goldleaf. You mentioned Last Prisoner, or did you say Last Prisoner?
Yeah, Last Prisoner Project, the D'Angelo brothers and more onto there. Big supporters of that. Yeah,
that's awesome. We did a fundraiser for them a couple years ago where we created an art print kind of just for them. It was part of our a series we did that's like one of our more art focused like pieces. So they're like travel prints, like those old vintage travel prints you'd see like Paris and
that is cool.
Except they were for states and that were for cannabis. But it was super like subtle. So it's not like California cannabis, or we have one for Ohio, and I think I got it in here, but it's like Ohio growing cannabis since 18 whatever with a brief pause.
That's cute though.
yeah. And for the Last Prisoner Project collab, it's like SoCal, so it's like this really great illustrator, Eugenia Mello. We worked with her on that, and it's kind of like a Where's Waldo type thing, where it's this like colorful, fun beach scene. But if you look closely, there's like 16 different cannabis references. Like you look at it from a distance, you're like, oh, it's a bunch of like cute cartoon people at a beach. But if you look closer, there's like it's just tons of cannabis references in there. And we're not trying to hide the fact that these prints are about cannabis. We're just not slapping you in the face with it. So anyway, that one came to be in a collab with LPP. We took like the originals and they auctioned them off for a fundraiser. So yeah, like those are the types of collabs that I love doing with Goldleaf, because it's like a lever that I can pull that feels like it's helpful and unique, in terms of publicity, in terms of continuing to kind of engage. So yeah, we've got a handful of ones that we've kind of married to different nonprofits along the way. And you can find those on our site. I think there are collections set up just for those.
I know. I was trying super behind the scenes. I was trying to find them super fast while we were talking, and I couldn't, so I gave up.
Okay.
I was looking for them. They're on there.
Shopgoldleaf.com. From like a web dev standpoint.
Yeah, it's so hard to type one-handed, talk with you. This is those things all at the same time, and maintain a professional conversation, which I've totally appreciated. Charlie McElroy from Goldleaf, shopgoldleaf.com. Before we go, just curious, how do you picture yourself, right? We are becoming more and more of a digital world. We got NFTs, we got all these things. And I love, actually, I can't get out of my head this Ernest Hemingway vibe of me with like a joint and a cup of like a glass of bourbon, like writing down all the bourbon. I really want those bourbon journals, like whiskey journal right now, because that feels to me like as you put it earlier, kind of this meditative individual experience, and writing it down and sipping it and tasting it, which is what cannabis is, right? If you take it that way, you inhale it, you think about it, kind of like wine. And they have, gangiers, like sommeliers or whatever they pronounce it. I always mispronounce that word. So they're getting these people. I just met one. I met my first gangier, like Zach Simcoe, who took this test to be able to inhale a product and be able to pick out terps or soil content, like crazy stuff, right? Nice. So it's growing up, and those are the type of things that people are, thinking about. But it feels like, I think about marketing all the time, and I'm definitely more a person who still likes to read the newspaper while touching it, which is why I appreciate so much what Goldleaf and shopgoldleaf.com has. How do you compete with the digital, with the kids these days? Like, how do you figure Goldleaf survives with that? Like, what's that strategy? Or are you just going to hope that have you thought about that clearly? And what do you think for yourself going forward? Do you fight it? Do you accept it? Do you give it the finger? What do you do?
And you're talking about,
just the adaption of images, like people so fast, like, artwork and stuff feels like, great. I think about kids these days and they're like, yeah, posters, even posters feels like it could be something of the past. And I just, so much digital artwork going onto there feels like the appreciation for tactile artwork is less.
Yeah, I'm tracking with you now.
Just something to think about.
No, I think that's very astute. So we're working on this one project that I feel like is a good one to bring up. So we work with a lot of beating heart real people, of course, like real illustrators and all that. And I love doing that. I'm an illustrator myself. So this idea of like AI created artwork is something that a lot of my peers are like intimidated or scared of, maybe, or they just don't like it.
Yeah.
And I get why. It seems like something that could eventually take your job. But I've had a blast using some of these tools. Like I've gotten like beta access to a few of them, and we're publishing an article on our site that's going to have like a whole bunch of like video content with it, and it's basically like a couple months exploration of these AI tools. And so basically we asked AI to illustrate the cannabis plant in the style of all of these famous like dead artists, like Winslow Homer and Pablo Picasso and stuff like that. And so it's basically a collection of the output from that. So it's really interesting. I see it more as like a tool in your tool belt as an artist, because you still need to direct that AI. Now, as like a, I don't know, technologist or whatever.
Sure, it's a good word. I like it.
Futurist. I can see a place where you don't need to direct it. That, you know what I mean? I can see a place where it gets so good that it really is better than anything that you could do. You being whoever is the artist. The difference there is like innovation and cultural understanding. Like you can apply things that like in Iran right now, subtly like against the government, or subtly one way or the other, that AI is not going to be able to pick up on because they don't exist in the present. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I think there's still going to be people involved, but I am fascinated by that side of things. And I kind of envision Goldleaf embracing that, whatever that means. This article we're going to publish about like all of these AI illustrations, I think will be really cool for people, but it's not really like, it's nothing that like we're monetizing. Like we're not going to sell prints of these AI pieces, even though some of them are cool. It's more just like an exercise in like, isn't it crazy that we live in a world where this is possible right now?
Yeah.
So yeah, that little anecdote is maybe like an answer there to your question. I feel like I'm just going to adapt and continue to like pursue what I'm passionate about, and that will lead me where it leads me,
Yeah, absolutely. It's all good. It's all well and good till every single person at Skyline Chili is replaced by robots. So, I mean, that's where we're coming. I mean, that's all I'm thinking about. I had to laugh as you're doing it, because all I'm picturing is like, no one's really replaced. And I'm like, tell that to dude who works at Skyline, who now is a robot giving you a hot dog covered in chili and cheese that tastes like cinnamon. Charlie McElroy, thank you for joining us today. Because Cannabis, Goldleaf, shopgoldleaf.com, and there'll be a link in the description below, which of course you're going to click on after you click subscribe to Because Cannabis from Wayward Media. Wayward.media is the website, at MeetWM. Socially, new shows every single Friday, 4:20 p.m. on our YouTube channel, followed a couple weeks later on our audio channel. Every Monday at 4:20 p.m. a brand new episode, sort of brand new episode comes out. Audio, Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, all that good stuff. Charlie, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate the conversation, talking about Ohio, talking about what amazing artwork that shopgoldleaf.com has available. And so thank you for joining us and catching up with us and doing a little Ohio love. Like we don't get a lot of guests these days from Ohio, so it's nice to bring it back to the OHIO. So thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure, BC. Thanks.
All right, take care.